Hi there, welcome to the archive. So today I wanted to revisit Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men by Lundy Bancroft. I have been want to just share a couple more things that I was reading that I found interesting. I went through the part where he debunks some of the myths. And I realized that I was one of those people who had fallen for a lot of these different myths that we tell each other. And so it was really humbling to get a different perspective. Um, One of the myths, there's a few that I'm still sticking with. Um, and he does say that, right? Like it took him a while as well to let go of some of those myths. And so again, it's gonna take a while to process, but some of them is he's abusive because he feels so strongly about me. People cause those who they care about the most deep pain. And basically, he was saying that this is an excuse um, that people tend to use often. And he says people we love can cause us deeper pain than anyone else. But what does this have to do with abuse, right? The abuser would not accept the following simple but erroneous formula: feelings cause behavior. When people hurt, when people feel hurt, they lash out at someone else in retaliation. When they feel jealous, they become possessive and accusatory. When they feel controlled, they yell and threaten, right? And he was saying, like, no, wrong. Each human being deals with hurt or resentment in a unique way. When they feel insulted or bullied, they may reach for a chocolate bar. In the same circumstance, I might burst out into tears. Another person may put his or her feelings quickly into words, confronting the mistreatment directly. Although our feelings can influence how we wish to act, our choices of how to behave are ultimately determined more by our attitudes and our habits. Um, and one of the examples he used was, I don't know if it was in this section, but basically he was like, how many of you have ever wanted to call your mom a bitch, for instance? And a, a lot of them put their hands up and they're like, how many have actually called your mom a bitch? And a lot of hands went down. And he was like, see, exactly. You know the difference, right? So it's not that you don't know to call your wife, your girlfriend, your partner a bitch. It's just that you think it's okay to do so. Um, and so again, it goes back to the mentality, right? It's your belief. Your belief is that you are able to call your wife, your partner, your girlfriend, that reporter piggy. It's your belief. You think it's okay to do that, and so that's why you do it. If you didn't think it was okay, you wouldn't do that, right? You're not calling the men in the room a piggy. You're not calling them stupid. It's because you know not to. You have respect for them. It's the women that you think deserve that. So that was really interesting as well too. Um, some women are attracted to the tough guy image, and some can't stand it. Take your pick. There are ways to tell whether a man is likely to turn abusive, but his gentle or macho persona style is not one of them. I thought that was also interesting, especially right now where we have this idea that um, the golden retrievers are more loving. The golden retrievers are somehow less abusive, right? And basically, this is saying if a man routinely intimidates people, watch out. Sooner or later, he will turn his intimidation on you. At first, it may feel safe to be with a man who frightens people, but not when your turn comes. I thought that was also really interesting because I think sometimes we do go for the ones that we think will like protect us, right? And then when we become the target of their aggression, it rattles us. An abuser almost never does anything that he himself considers morally unacceptable. This is what I was saying, right? He may hide what he does because he thinks other people would disagree with it, but he feels justified inside. In short, an abuser's core problem is he has a distorted sense of right and wrong. The abuser's problem lies above all in his belief that controlling or abusing his female partner is justifiable. This is the thing. They think it's okay. They wouldn't do it to another man, but you, small girl like you, oh well, we could do it to you, right? It's justifiable. Um, and then there were some interesting ways. I saw a post today that was like, people know exactly what it is that they're doing, and this section reminded me of that. It says, when I was new to counseling abusive men, my own loss of control myth collided repeatedly with the realities contained in the stories of my early clients. Kenneth admitted that he would dim the lights and then insist to Jennifer that nothing had changed, trying to make her feel crazy. James told me that he sometimes would hide something his partner was looking for, such as pocketbook or her car keys, wait for her to become frantic and frustrated looking for it, and then put it back in plain view and insist that it was there all along. So this is a gaslighting, right? Mario measured the distance from his house to the supermarket, and when his wife reported going out to shop during the day, he would check the odometer of her car to make sure she hadn't gone anywhere else. One year, my colleagues David and Carol were preparing a skit on abuse for a conference, and they decided to perform a rehearsal for their abuser group. Afterward, the group members rapid fired their suggestions for improving the skit, directing them mostly to David. No, 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 don't make excuses for why you are home late. That puts you on the defensive. You've got to turn it around on her. Tell her you know she's cheating on you. You're staying too far away from her, David. Take a couple steps towards her so she'll know you mean business. You're letting her say too much. You've got to cut her off before and stick to your points. The counselors were struck by how aware the clients were of the kind of tactics they use, and they would use them. In the excitement of giving feedback on the skit, the men let down their facade as out of control abusers who didn't realize what he was doing. I don't want to make abusers sound evil. They don't calculate and plan out every single move they make, though they use forethought more often than you would expect. I thought that was really interesting too, because a lot of people are like, oh, I lost control and I didn't know what I was doing. And he was saying, like, that's not true, right? A lot of abusers, if they're physically harming somebody, they know to stop as soon as the police shows up, for instance, right? So you knew to stop. It's just you didn't care when it was her. It's not that you lost control. You just thought that it was justifiable what you were doing because you look at her as beneath you. And so I thought that was interesting as well too. Um, and not only did they know to stop when the police came, this one guy even went so far as to say that when the police pulled up in front of the house, he would sweet talk the police, telling them what she had done. Then they would look at her and she'd be the one who would be totally out of control because I had just degraded her and put her in fear. I'd say to the police, see, it isn't me. And so, yeah, Ty managed to escape arrest repeatedly with his calm demeanor and claims of self-defense. And so they'll, you know, do whatever it is that they do, hit you, slap you, whatever. The police shows up, they stop that behavior. Now you're the one that's pissed off and raging. And I was like, see, she was a violent one. It was just self-defense, and they know what they're doing. I thought that was really interesting as well too. So, he also talks about how a lot of it is often not mental illness related. The The great majority of my clients over the years have been psychologically normal. Their minds work logically, they understand cause and effect, they don't hallucinate, their perceptions of most life circumstances are reasonably accurate. They get good reports at work. They do well in school and training programs. There's nothing wrong with them psychologically. It's their value system is unhealthy, not their psychology. I thought that was also really interesting. And he says, obviously, that's not to say that some people don't have depression or such, but research does indicate that the most extreme physical batterers, the ones who choke their partners to unconsciousness, those who hold guns to their heads, those who stalk and kill, they do have an increased rates of mental illness, but there's no particular mental health condition that is typical of these severe batterers. They can have a range of diagnoses, including psychosis, borderline personality, manic depression, antisocial personality, obsessive compulsive disorder, and others. But it says, even among the most dangerous abusers, there are many who do not show clear psychiatric symptoms of any kind. I thought that was also really interesting. A man whose destructive behaviors are confirmed primarily or entirely in intimate relationships is an abuser, not a psychiatric patient, right? So if your only time you're beating people up is your girlfriend, if the only time you're degrading people is women, then it's likely an issue that is your belief patterns that something is going on. Another thing he said is sometimes people will be like, he must be delusional to think he can get away with this, right? But unfortunately, it often turns out that he can get away with it. It's not delusion at all, right? A lot of men get away with this type of behaviors, and so they know that they can do it. Um, yeah, so these are some of the. I struggled with myth number 9 is he hates women. His mother or some other woman must have done something terrible to him. I watched a Diddy documentary yesterday, over the week, yeah, yesterday. And part of it is like you see the mother, right? Oh, well, this can like is an attempt to explain why he is what he is. His mother abused him. She used to be physically abusive. He used to hit her. And so we see that. He says that's a myth, right? Disrespect for women certainly is rampant above abusive men, with attitudes towards women that fall in a continuum from those who can interact fairly constructively with most women, but the idea that like all of them hate women is not. That I think it is misogyny. They do tend to hate women for the most part. So that's myth number 9 I struggled with. He's afraid of intimacy and abandonment. That was another myth. It's like that's not it. He suffers from low self-esteem. He needs his self-image shored up. He said, an abusive man expects catering, and the more positive attention he receives, the more he demands. He never reaches a point where he is satisfied, where he has been given enough, right? Rather, he gets used to the luxurious treatment he is receiving and soon escalates his demands. So I learned that the hard way, right? Oh, well, it's just his, you're just trying to make them feel better, and it doesn't work. Each time we have, oh yeah, this is another thing how women are like, we don't publicly praise men because as soon as you praise a man, he's going to humiliate you. It was interesting because he said that we found that each time we give a client public attention, he had a bad incident of mistreating his partner within a few days hereafter. And I thought that was really interesting because you hear a lot of women say like, I stopped praising my man in public because as soon as you're like, my man, my man, my man, he does something to humiliate you publicly. And so I thought that was really interesting that they found that they had to stop publicly praising these men because as soon as they did, he would regress. Um, Feeling like a star and a changed man, his head swelled from all the attention he had been given. He would go home and rip into his partner with accusations and put downs. So we had to stop taking our clients to public appearances. I thought that was really interesting as well too. So The more power the oh another myth was like, oh, it's because his boss abuses him at work. He feels disempowered at work. That's why he takes it out on you. He feels unsuccessful, and he was saying that's a myth, right? Boss abuses man, man abuses woman, woman abuses children, children hit dog, dog bites cat. This image creates seems plausible, but too many pieces fail. And so basically he says the more power these men have in their jobs, the more catering and submission they expect at home. Sometimes you see this with like police officers, for instance, right? And the high domestic abuse rates at home. That would make sense as well too. I've heard the same thing with like surgeons. Um, Sometimes they have like a god complex because they're saving, or doctors because they're saving people's lives. They come at home and they exert that same power and domination. So I thought that was interesting. I never once had a client whose behavior at home has improved because his job situation improved. So there certainly are some women who treat their male partners badly, berating them, calling them names, attempting to control them. The negative impact on these men's lives can be considerable. But do we see men whose self esteem is gradually destroyed through this process? Do we see men whose progress in school or in their careers grind to a halt because of the constant criticism and undermining? Where are the men whose partners are forcing them to have unwanted sex? Where are the men who are fleeing to shelters in fear of their lives? How about those who try to get on a phone to call for help, but the women block their way to cut the line? The reason we don't generally see these men is simple: they're rare. I don't question how embarrassing it would be for a man to come forward and admit that a woman is abusing him, but don't underestimate how humiliated a woman feels when she reveals abuse. Women crave dignity just as much as men do. If shame stopped people from coming forward, no one would tell. And so, yeah, these are some of the things that I'm learning. Um, Another thing is like, sure, I win a physical fight, but she is much better with her mouth than I am. And he said one person even says she stabs me through the heart with her words. And the person said this to justify why he had stabbed his partner in the chest with a knife. He stabbed the woman in the chest with a knife, and he justified it because she stabs him in the heart with her words. Men can be abused by other men, however, and women can be abused by women. Sometimes, though, through the means they include physical intimidation or violence. He talks about if you are a gay man or a lesbian who has been abused by a partner or who is facing abuse now, most of what I explain in this book will also apply to you, basically. So, another thing is like he's abusive because he's faced so much societal discrimination, right? Speaking of like men of color, he's like, that's another myth. If anything, men of color are among the most visible leaders in the US in the movement against the abusive men, right? Um, and he says the majority of the abusive men are white, many of them well educated and economically privileged, so discrimination couldn't be a central cause of partner abuse. Second, if a man has experienced oppression himself, it could just as easily make him more sympathetic to women in distress, not less so. Another myth is like, oh, it's because he's an alcoholic or he has drug abuse. He's like, it's important to point alcohol cannot create an abuser, and sobriety cannot change one either. A man can overcome his abusiveness. The only way a man can overcome his abusiveness is by dealing with his abusiveness. And so, yeah, those are some things I wanted to share. You are not enabling your partner to mistreat you. He is entirely responsible for his own actions. So that's the first two chapters so far. There are some things where, again, myth number 9 I'm still struggling with because I do think there's a huge element of misogyny, which I think he would agree with, right? But the fact that it's solely because they hate all women is not necessarily entirely true. So again, this is why does he do that? Inside the mind and minds of angry and controlling men. So I just thought I would share some notes from there. Until next time, in solidarity.